I will start with a very important message, and it's that this session is going to be the most democratic one during the whole conference. And the reason is a question of inclusion. When I read through the participation list, I saw that I was the only participant from Sweden, and then there was only one non-Scandinavian speaking person, and that was John Visser. So I actually prepared my speech in English, and my PowerPoints in English. Unfortunately, John has left. Too much work for nothing. So I think the best thing to do now is to let you decide whether I should speak Swedish or English. How many of you want me to speak English? How many want me to speak Swedish? It seems to be 64% pro-English and 36% pro-Swedish. So I will try to make this in English as well. It's because of the PowerPoints that I will present. They will be in English, and it will be difficult for me to try to translate up in my head and do that for a Danish public in Norway. So what I'm going to talk about is first of all the current situation in Sweden concerning special needs education or education. I will also share with you some results from an ongoing research project, data collected, and we are in the analysis phase at the moment. And it's a project which concerns both Norway and Sweden, unfortunately not Denmark, but I think there will be some results that will be interesting to share with you. First of all, I would like to say something about what's happening at the moment in Sweden now, because one could say that at the moment things are changing rapidly in our country. We are going to get a new teacher education program. The present one is only 6 years old, but we will have a new one starting from 2010 or perhaps 2011. We will also have a new special teacher education program started in August this year as a complement to the traditional special educator program which we have had since 1991. That means return of a special teacher. I thought he or she was dead, but no. This is politics. It's not based on research, I can tell you that. We also have the regularization of upper secondary schooling, which means that the model we have had in Sweden as well as in Norway will be changed, so that you choose between a theoretical way of studying and a more practical one. And that is something new. We haven't had that system for 25 years actually, but it will start from 2011. New grading and new system, because we got the new School Act. The present School Act is actually 25 years old. And we will get a new national curriculum and national syllabi for all subjects for the comprehensive school. And also at the same time, the present government is restructuring the national education authorities, agencies in Sweden. So much is emphasized on inspection today, not very much on development. Inspection is the word. Quality by inspection. If you look at the state picture of current education politics today, we say that there is a profound mistrust against education research. Professor Egelund told us yesterday about the 60s and 70s, golden years for researchers. Talked about the researchers in our countries who were part of the new school system, the education system. Today you could say that researchers are not listened to, at least not in Sweden. Low quality teacher education for declining school results is a message from government. The paradox is that those who are educated within the new program are very, very few, less than 1% in schools. So how can they be blamed for the bad results? To change the wrong education program. You can also say that there are too much of simple solutions to complex problems. And another thing is that we, as well as in Denmark and Norway, experience traumas concerning the results from PISA, TIMSS and PIRLS. National traumas. And that is it's funny really because we are not that bad. Sweden is on average above average, but not so bad as it is shown in media and by the Minister of Education. So this is what's happening at the moment, a kind of background for what I'm going to say now. Now I'll present preliminary results from this project, and it's run together with a colleague from Norway, the chairman from the University of Agder, a colleague at Jönköping, and myself. And we have, I would show you the method, but we have sent out questionnaires to all municipalities in Sweden and in Norway. Quite high response. First of all, some legal definitions. In Sweden we talk about särskilt stöd for special support. Around 16% of all pupils in compulsory school receive that kind of support in Sweden. And in Sweden, in Norway, it's around 3%. These figures are from our study. The official figures from Norway is lower, I think. Receive special education. And if you look at the reasons for giving special support in Sweden, it's connected with goal fulfillment. If there is reason to believe that people will not reach the minimum level by the end of the fifth and ninth school year, or if there are other reasons for support. So if the teacher thinks that the pupil will not reach the goals in year 5 and 9, it's a question of special support. On the contrary, in Norway, pupils who are not receiving or can't obtain satisfactory benefits from another treatment are required for special education. So there are quite different reasons for using special needs education in our two countries. If we look at the project, we used a questionnaire. We sent it to first 290 municipalities in Sweden. When we started, I didn't know that there were so many municipalities in Norway. So the cost for the stamps is quite high really. It was completed by school districts with independents, so persons to be signatured by them. We made 3 rounds of data collection, and the response rate from Norway is a little too low, a bit more than 60%, in Sweden much more, around 90%. And we use descriptive statistics. I will present some of the results here, and the first diagram here shows the percentage of municipalities indicating an increase or decrease in special education professional activities in the last 5 years. This is interesting. If you look at the first one, individual tutoring, meaning that you give a single pupil support, alone with him or her, or together in group. Around 20% of the municipalities in Norway say that this has increased, while around 40% say it has decreased during the last 5 years. And Swedish figures are even more flagrant. Around 10% say that it has increased, and around 60% has decreased. This is very interesting if you remember what I said about the new special teacher education program in Sweden. The belief in Sweden today is that if we have special teachers again, we will get much better results in schools. The special educator in our country works mostly giving advice, counseling and such thing, mentoring for colleagues and parents and also for students. Giving advice to teachers is also something that has increased a lot, both in Norway and in Sweden, as you can see here. So 50% of the municipalities in Norway and 90 in Sweden say that this has increased during the last 5 years, compared to just a few percent saying it has decreased. So the direction is evident here. It's more of working collaboratively, more of working together with staff, trying to make a difference when it comes to school development and such things. Even the bias in students has increased in both countries. You can also see that the limitation of development has increased. And the last one, paperwork. I think you recognize that. Because it's increased a lot. Look at this diagram. It says something about percentage of municipalities indicating an organizational approach as varied or somewhat common. And if we look at grouping children in small groups and giving their teach them in such groups, more than 50% of the lessons in a week. Less than 20% in Norway say that this is common or not common. Very common. And almost the same figures in Sweden. So this is not very usual to use that kind of method in schools. Neither in Norway or in Sweden. Separate groups, less than 50% of the lessons each week. So you can see that quite common. The third one is pretty interesting to read that. The fourth one, weekly special education instruction is very common. Adjustment of class size, if you experience problems in a class and you try to adjust the class size, it's quite common in Norway, but it's less common in Sweden. Assistants, very common in those countries, means that by assistant we mean a person who is not a professional educator, but works as a kind of facilitator in class. It's a teacher resource, very common in Norway, not that common in Sweden. And having special educators in the classroom together with general educators. This is the fact. The interesting thing is if you look at what they decide, what they really want. Then you can see that in Norway, it would be preferable to have even more of these groups. While in Sweden, the official policies during the last 2 decades has been against such groups, and I think that is and when you look at the groups for those who don't have that much, in both countries they would like to reduce this implementation. More of integration in special groups for those who have severe difficulties. In Norway, those who go to special education weekly, it's about the same as I have in fact. Just at the class size, you can see what those who have responded to the questionnaire say. It would be preferable to try to get class size in Norway today. Assistants are more than we want in Sweden. In Norway, this is around 14. It's the teacher report. Norway is monthly, and the same with the last one. If we look at this, and here it's interesting to compare with Borås research, but also what we have heard during these 2 days before. The first line here is about percentage of districts reported losing students based on specific diagnosis. In Sweden, a little more than 50% of those who receive special education in schools, they have the diagnosis. Around 1/4 of the Norwegian pupils have the diagnosis. What is most common? Absolutely most common is the interesting thing here is that when you look at these small groups, most pupils who are in these small groups, they have ADHD or other social emotional problems. Reading and writing problems, dyslexia, much more common to use small groups for these difficulties in Norway and Sweden. And language problems, around the same. We also look at the distribution of resources and compare countries in respect of who decides when resources are distributed among schools, around schools. In both countries, well, there's a scale from 1 to 5. In both countries, the teachers have not very much impact on the distribution of resources. In Sweden, administrators on municipality level have more impact on this than in Norway. Principals, head teachers, decide a lot in both countries. Teachers not very much, special educators quite a lot, and parents not that much. And if you look at who decides and who has the influence on the content of special education support in countries, first of all, it's interesting to see that they are so like each other in these countries, and it's despite that we have very different teacher education programs, special teacher education programs in our countries. In Sweden, special education teacher programs are regulated by government. You have special exams prescribed by government, which you don't have in Norway. And still there is the same pattern. Politicians have, of course, I would say, not very much to do with the content. And principals have a lot to do with it in those countries. Teachers less, and special educators a lot of course. Parents quite a lot in our countries. And this is interesting. We could have this in the US earlier this year, and people were very they were astonished about the big influence from parents and children in our countries. It was not that common in the US. So it's surprisingly good. Okay? If we look at these results and interpretation of it, we can see similar trends regarding changes in special education professional activities. There is evidence of both the relational and individual based interpretation of disability, meaning that if you can compare the LP model with our results, you can see that in many cases the environment is an important factor when you decide how to deal with children's problems. But it can also be a question of very individual diagnosis. The use of multiple teachers in classrooms is both desirable and common. And this is an interesting thing. The pupils with social, emotional, and or behavior problems are most likely to be segregated. And when we listened to Professor Visser before, something to really go further with, because as Thomas Nordahl also has shown, it's very questionable if this is a good solution for pupils who have behavior which is not accepted. In Sweden this is very, very common. And we have an increasing number of schools, especially designed for pupils who have behavior, concentration difficulties which is not accepted in schools. So there is a return in Sweden actually of a very, very old-fashioned concept. We're trying to treat that kind of problems separately from other children. And I'm very worried about this development in our country, because evidence shows that these pupils, if handled, they need to stabilize adults around. They are not. We can show from evidence from research that if they are segregated in small groups, they come further away from society, further away from their friends. And this is not a new result. Gunnar Stangvik showed the same around 30 years ago in his research in Norway. So it's amazing that this concept is still used in that in Denmark, that I may think that you have the same problems there. The method of defining difficulties has implications for both prevalence and special education and professional persons. So how you define the problem, how you classify problems has very big impact on what you do, how much resources you put into the methods or the work with these pupils. And last one here, special educators are seen as having substantial influence on the distribution of special education resources and its content. In Sweden, we have, as I said before, we have had a special teacher education program since 1990, which has aimed to work more with school development, and together with the principals in schools, then working with children individually or school groups. This is going to be changed radically at the moment. So the special teacher comes back. I'm quite sure that the special educator program will disappear in favor of a special teacher program. And this is despite 20 or 25 years of research within the field. And as I said before, we have a big problem in the way that politicians are not at all interested in research results. So it's what happens in the head of the minister which is important, not what happens on the research field. We have, of course, some limitations in this project. One is, of course, the lower response rate in Norway. 39% of Norwegian municipalities didn't participate, while around 9% in Sweden didn't participate. But perhaps the most important factor is that there are different proportions of people receiving support. Around 8% in Norway, double in Sweden. And that probably means that on average, those students who receive education in Sweden don't have that severe problems as in Norway. And that has, of course, an impact upon the measures taken in the beginning of the support. Another limitation might be that the perceptions of superintendents may not reflect the reality of facts. The population of other groups, therefore, is limited. It could be that the person who works with these things on the central level in the municipality knows what to say more than knows how it is. Because there is, of course, a way of kind of rhetoric which may be used in this respect. We have seen that in many places in Sweden that those who work on that level, they know very well what is the correct way of expressing themselves. But this is always a problem when you carry out these kinds of investigations. There is also a problem concerning the differences in size among municipalities in the country, which say over comparisons. I didn't actually know before that there are municipalities in Norway with around just 300 people. The least municipality tiniest municipality in Sweden has about 5,000 inhabitants. So there is a big difference. And there were some municipalities which we contacted in Norway. They had difficulties to complete the questionnaire because they were so busy. Because it was the same person who was responsible for the whole municipality. He was also the school leader in the school, and he was also playing the organ in the church. So, of course, we could understand that he didn't have time to do this. Another thing which has an impact here is, despite we are so close to each other and the systems are very similar, there is a difference in culture or terminology which limits validity. In Sweden we have something called särskola, which is a kind of schooling for the mentally disabled pupils. And these pupils, these schools have a separate school ordinance. They have the same national curriculum, but they have a separate ordinance. You don't have the same solution of ordinance in neither Denmark nor Norway. So it's difficult to compare the results when you have such system differences. This is also a big question because in Sweden we have an official figure of how many pupils who are segregated and go to such schools. That's around 2% of the whole school population. It's more difficult to get correct proportion, at least in Norway. because these schools are run by the municipalities themselves, and they are not. It's not a question of regulation from government or from a national level, which makes it more difficult to compare. Our results are at this moment preliminary. We're going to complete these analyses, and we will go on with further investigations on a qualitative basis in the schools, because you get a lot of numbers here but you don't get a hint of what is behind all these figures and numbers. I got a message before my speech, and that was to try to speak faster. No, that was wrong. Not to speak that fast, but I should also try to limit my presentation to 30 minutes. That was not an easy equation, but I think I managed. Thank you very much.